Welcome to another edition of Pach-Attack. This week's question from Blackout Now. His name has the word now in it, so of course he starts the question with the word now. Nowadays, there exist retail games. I love people who talk like that. With locked content on their disc, game modes, characters. This content will then be released a few days or weeks later for extra money by paying for a code which unlocks the stuff. Is it legal that publishers can charge us for things we already have paid for? That's an easy one. Completely legal. Absolutely, positively legal. You haven't paid for it. You've paid for a disc. Arguably, if you are smart enough to crack the code and get into that content, arguably you couldn't be prosecuted. So good for you if you're able to figure out how to crack the code. If you remember back in the day, this is going back like 100 years to Hot Coffee, 2005, there was locked content. It wasn't released for extra money. It was locked because the publisher, Take-Two, Rockstar, decided that it was too racy and would cause the game to get an AO rating, adults only rating, instead of M. So they locked it and people cracked the code. And initially, Take-Two's response to cracking the code was that the people who were playing the Hot Coffee portion of the game had illegally obtained that content, and so they're trying to absolve themselves of any liability. They lost that one, so I guess it's okay to crack the code. But let me give you a good analogy. If you have a cable box or you have DirecTV, trust me, the porn content on those sites is actually flowing into your house. Now, probably if you're among the 99% who don't ever watch porn because you're above all that, you don't pay for porn. And if you're among that very small percentage of people who has an illegal cable box or an illegal DirecTV card, you're hacking in and you're getting that stuff for free. You didn't pay for it, you're breaking the law, you're stealing the signal. The signal flows into your house, but you have to pay to decode it. It's exactly the same thing with locked content in a game. And by the way, I wouldn't know anything about stealing porn. I know nothing about porn. Just giving you an analogy. This next question comes from Twitter, @stone_myojin. With the development of more games being online, will there be a change in position towards the Chinese market? You know, online games were invented to address piracy in the Chinese market. The reason that people came up with the idea of having games hosted on server was that if you ever released a disc in China, it would be copied immediately and be out for $1 on the street corner. And it turned out the Chinese market is big for gaming, willing to spend a lot of money, so we kind of got this microtransaction, free-to-play concept, and that worked. We also got the server-based MMO type pay by the minute if you go to an internet cafe. I think what you're going to actually see in the Chinese market is a huge, huge, huge increase in the middle class. And right now, middle class in China is defined as something like $15,000 to $30,000 household income, which is not very much money. That's probably poverty line in the US, but it's still way up from kind of the low end in China. And we're talking something like a couple of 100 million people. Give that 10 years and it's going to be half, if not 3/4 the people in China are going to be at that level, and you're going to have this emerging upper class that are making $75,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year. That's enough that those people are going to own PCs in the home, possibly own consoles in the home, and so I think it's a gigantic market. I mean, it's a market that is probably bigger than the US or bigger than Western Europe, big enough for the content owners, content makers to address. So yes, I think you're going to see a change in exactly how we make games and how we market them. And I think that, with a very long-term view, that's why you're getting things like Call of Duty Elite. I think that the idea of games as a service, so far has been pioneered by Activision. I don't think that's a mistake. I'm the one who said we would have Call of Duty Elite a year and a half before it was announced. And it's because I heard Bobby Kotick once talk about a migration to games as a service, and that's what I thought he meant. Games as a service means, just like Netflix is a service for streaming, you pay a subscription and you get pretty much all you can eat content. I think you're going to see that, and I think that will work really well in the Chinese market. But the only way anybody's going to really make a lot of money is if you have very wealthy people in China. By very wealthy, I mean 75,000 to 100,000 kind of income, who are willing to spend, the same kind of $5 a month, $10 a month on games as a service. And then you're talking about a potential market of hundreds of millions. So I think that's a real likelihood. I think you're going to see that emerge. Our next question comes from Twitter, @JoeNLove Jr. I wonder who Joe N. Love Sr. is, and does he know you have his Twitter name? Do you think Sony will ever allow in-game chat parties during gameplay? What's your thought on why they haven't? Wow. I actually didn't know that you couldn't do it because it's something that I actually could care less about doing. So I don't know why. Good question. Will they ever do it? If there's enough demand. My guess is they haven't because there hasn't been enough demand. I would think that, probably only a handful of people care. I mean, if you play multiplayer, you can have a headset and you can communicate clearly. I'm not sure why we really want to have a chat party, but again, I'm the wrong generation. I barely text, and the 3 women in my household combined last month for 7,000 texts in a month. Tried to work that out. My math skills aren't that good, but that's over 200 texts between them a day. I can't figure it out. It's like 5 texts an hour. I don't get it. I don't know how they do it. These women just love to text to one another. And when I asked the 3 of them, and by the way, my wife was the biggest offender, so it's not the little kids, she was like, well, but does a text include if you just reply back and say N? And yeah, but I don't get why people don't talk anymore. It drives me crazy. Anyway, in-game chat parties, if my wife ever plays games on the next Sony console, they'll have to have chat parties because she loves to chat. Thank you, fellow babies, for joining us on this week's Pach-Attack. If you have questions, you can submit them by clicking the link below, or you can submit them to me directly on Twitter @MichaelPachter, and please copy @RohanLikesPants because Rohan selects the questions. Thanks again.